The second generation version of Toyota's Aygo citycar is a little more efficient, a little more high-tech and a little more fun to drive. Plus there's a whole host of personalisation options. This is, in the brand's own words, a car you could be proud of. It certainly has a lot more of its own identity this time round. So, what makes a car feel fun? Sprightly handling, cheeky looks, clever marketing. And can an urban runabout really qualify for purchase on those grounds? With this model, the second generation Toyota Aygo, we're told that it can. You might think you know this car, but if you haven't tried this Mark II version launched here in the summer of 2014, then you probably don't. Yes, it shares many of its mechanicals with the original design. No, it's not the same. Let's start with the fundamental thing that hasn't changed. As before, this design has been produced as part of a joint Toyota PSA Group venture that's also bought as French alternatives, sharing most of this car's important bits, namely Peugeot's 108 and Citroen's C1. That was also the case with the first generation Aygo, but that car didn't make much attempt to differentiate itself. This one's very different. It's not only the look that's unique, but also the very specific way you can personalise it to suit almost any kind of taste or preference. Which is all very nice, but will it be enough to attract the buyers Toyota needs in this segment, in the face of competition from slightly larger and sometimes slightly cheaper rivals? Well, let's see. No other competitor is more efficient, safer or more laden with technology. That ought to be enough for starters. Let's see what else this Aygo has to offer. So, this car is supposed to be fun to drive. But just how much fun is it really possible to have in a car with just 69 braked horses beneath its bonnet? Well, actually, a surprising amount. For a start, the 998cc unit sounds playful. Its normally aspirated note filling the cabin with a characterful three-cylinder thrum. True, the long first and second gear ratios mean you'll have to rev it quite hard for meaningful progress, but there's plenty of performance for town trips. Citycar buyers are more loyal to petrol power than any other group of motorists, and Toyota has been more loyal to this particular petrol engine used here than you'd expect a brand to be. Its fundamentals do, after all, date all the way back to the launch of the first generation Aygo model in 2005. Still, on the quiet, many engines today have fundamentals that go back quite a long way. And in any case, this one has been thoroughly reworked for the modern era, with a higher compression ratio, an improved combustion chamber design, and the use of a low-friction timing chain, all combining not only to improve efficiency, but also to boost power slightly over the previous model. If you are familiar with that car, then you should find this one to be a touch more drivable. For a start, in the original Aygo, you needed to really wind some revs onto the clock in order to get anywhere, which had a marked effect, of course, on your fuel consumption. In this car, nearly all of its 95 Newton meters of pulling power is available right down low in the rev range from as little as 2000 RPM, so you won't need to rev the thing to death in order to get it going. Once on the move, the first thing you probably notice is just how light most of the controls are, especially the steering and the clutch. The exception to this is the gear change, which needs more of a firm shove than you'd expect from a car designed with urban driving in mind. If that's an issue, then you might well be tempted by the optional automatic X-shift gearbox that's potentially controllable via a set of steering wheel gear shift paddles that I doubt too many potential owners will bother with. I can also see many older folks scratching their heads, wondering about the throttle blipping downshifts that this transmission allows. The X-Shift variant will certainly suit urban-bound folk, people who'll appreciate the tight 4.8 metre turning circle and that light steering I mentioned. Parking is as easy as you'd expect in a car with an overall length of under 3.5 metres, with good all-round visibility marred only slightly by the chunky rear C-pillars. The wide rear wheel arches might be a bit vulnerable here, but since most variants will probably be fitted with the X-Touch multimedia system standard reverse parking camera, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. These big clear mirrors should help too. Venture beyond the city limits and you won't be expecting too many performance fireworks, nor will you get them. This car's Peugeot 108 and Citroen C1 design stablemates offer a more powerful 82 brake horsepower 1.2 litre VTI petrol engine as an option to this 1 litre unit, an engine Toyota either doesn't want or has been told it can't have. It depends who you believe. Either way, the result is that Aygo buyers must be content with distinctly modest levels of performance. The sprint to 62 miles an hour is covered in 14.2 seconds if you choose the 5-speed manual model, but takes a yawning 15.5 seconds if you go for the X-Shift automatic. Both variants run out of steam at 99 miles an hour. Could you comfortably venture further afield in this car? Well, potentially yes. Both wind and road noise have been more effectively suppressed at typical A-road speeds to make that more possible, and you certainly notice the difference on the motorway. There doesn't, though, seem to have been much effort put into isolating the engine note. If anything, that's been emphasised, as Toyota believes it contributes to this car's whole fun ethos. As I mentioned earlier, there's a really lively thrum under acceleration, something you'll either like or you won't. At least it makes the car feel peppier than it actually is. The brakes also feel up to spec, despite this Toyota doing without rear discs and opting for a cheaper rear drum setup instead. And handling? Well, the Aygo development team say that they benchmarked the Ford Ka in this respect, one of the results of which was that the steering was made 14% more direct than the old car. True enough, it does provide more fingertip feedback than before. Other incremental dynamic improvements include retuned springs and dampers, plus a lighter rear torsion beam, one of the things contributing to a 60 kilogram weight saving over the previous model. The result is a slightly more agile, chuckable city runabout that can now be driven with a bit more vigour, but still isn't the driver's choice in this segment, though that's something few likely buyers will care much about. Pitch into a corner and you get the predictable helping of body roll and tyre squeal you'd expect from this sort of car. Stick with it though, and this Toyota can nevertheless be pretty good fun to pedal along. It might perhaps have been sharper in this respect had not Toyota's engineers, rightly, been so mindful of the need to preserve a decent standard of ride quality. Now, because they had been, this car handles road humps and potholes very well. It's that bit better in this respect than before. In fact, as you probably gathered by now, almost everything about this second generation car is that bit better than before. No radical steps have been taken. The car just feels that bit more sophisticated and grown up. Go fun yourself. Now, I'm not going to tell you what I think of that particular marketing slogan, but it does accurately sum up the out on a limb, love it or hate it approach that Toyota is taking with this car. It simply has to be different, not only because the city car segment is overstuffed with talented opposition, but also because it must share so much under the skin with its design stablemates, Peugeot's 108 and Citroen's C1. The three cars roll out of the same Czech factory, riding on the same common platform, using the same 1 litre petrol engine and sharing many of the same interior fittings. That didn't leave Aygo chief engineer David Tarai much scope for his product to have an individual appeal, except when it came to exterior style. So he and his team have grasped that opportunity with both hands. Compare this car against its French counterparts and you'll find that aside from the rear passenger door and the angle of the windscreen, not a single body panel is the same. Tarai and his team set out to create something very different from the inoffensive first generation version of this model. noting that in a crowded marketplace it's better to have a design that half your potential customers love rather than one that nobody objects to. So this one is fitted as standard with a hefty dose of attitude. Just look at this front end, apparently inspired by the car in the Japanese cartoon Astro Boy. No, I hadn't heard of it either. Anyway, that X-shaped frontal graphic is something we're going to see a lot more of on future Toyotas, the larger Yaris Super Mini having also adopted it. It's supposed to be a manifestation of the Japanese youth culture J-Playful design philosophy that the brand now wants all of its small cars to have, and is key to the appeal of this model because it leads us directly to the theme that Toyota hopes will give this Aygo a real lift, namely customization. If you thought that term applied to optional alloy wheels, a spoiler and maybe the odd body stripe, you'll be in for a shock when the time comes to spec up this car. You see, it's been designed so that as many parts as possible can be snapped off and replaced with different colour bits, a process that your dealer will encourage you to start with your own interpretation of this front end with its narrow projector style headlamps. The X graphic that dominates the grille section is normally black, but with darker colours can be specified in lighter shades for a contrasting look that extends right back here to the door mirrors. It doesn't end there either. The rear bumper insert, the front bumper and of course the alloy wheels can all be colour matched to suit your preference, with the different panels exchangeable by your dealer within minutes. As a result, Aygo folk can refresh the look of their cars cheaply and easily, possibly even exchanging colours with another owner at little or no cost. Talking of a contrasting look, the designers have even gone to the trouble of giving this car its own unique so-called double bubble roof, a feature that extrovert owners can highlight with coloured decals. That roof has been designed to accommodate a retractable fabric folding top and has been lowered slightly in comparison to the previous generation model, with the front A-pillar moved slightly forwards to create a balanced yet energetically forward-leaning posture. You see that in profile too, with a boldly sloping belt line that flows back into a neat pair of forward angled rear light clusters, though the exact look and feel differs between the 3-door variant and the 5-door model I have here that extends its window graphic into the tail lamps, giving an impression of extra length. Here at the rear, with its integrated roof spoiler, the idea has been to mirror the frontal design statement, but what's far more obvious is that this second generation Aygo has carried over its predecessor's signature design element, a glass rear hatch that replaces a conventional tailgate. From a production point of view, this doubtless reduces the cost of manufacturing, but from an ownership perspective, it's a feature I've never liked. Unlike a proper lifting rear hatch, this opening glass panel doesn't cut into the bumper, so there's quite a high lip over which you've to lift your shopping. The Volkswagen Up, along with its Skoda and Seat stablemates, suffers from the same thing for the same reason. Still, on the positive side, once you have got your packages in place, there's significantly more space than the first generation version of this car could offer, total cargo capacity having risen from 139 to 168 litres, enough for a couple of suitcases or a set of golf clubs. Granted, that's no great shakes, given that rival Volkswagen, Skoda and Seat models, like Hyundai's i10, can offer over 250 litres. Still, it's also true that in cars like this one, the rear bench is rarely used and so can be pushed down, in this case to reveal over 750 litres of space, so I'm guessing that lack of luggage room will rarely be an issue for most owners. After all, if you need a greater capacity than that for your weekly shop, it might well be time to change your lifestyle rather than your car. If you are using the back seat, then you won't be expecting it to be very spacious, given that this car is just 3.4 metres in length and has a wheelbase unchanged over that of the diminutive original version. In fact, due to a bit of design cleverness, Toyota has actually managed to free up an extra 9mm of legroom back here. It's still not enough to make longer journeys comfortable for taller adults, but more ordinary folk will survive without too much grousing on short to medium length trips. I might even think of cramming my 3 kids on this bench, were it not for the fact that, rather annoyingly, there are still only 2 belts provided. If you do have kids, then I'd definitely go for the 5-door model. I've tried transporting my trio in the past with a 3-door Aygo, and it didn't take too long for the front seat backs to start looking very scuffed and scruffy as the children piled in and out. One annoyance with this car that isn't exclusive to this Toyota in the city car segment is the high-rising belt line that engenders a feeling of claustrophobia, and it's exacerbated by the fact that you don't get proper wind-up windows, but instead simply this catch mechanism. Up front, it's reasonably easy to get comfortable, provided you've avoided an entry-level variant without seat height adjustment, something that's important to have because the steering wheel adjusts only up and down, not in and out. Ahead of you, there's a trapezoidal centre console that sets the theme for the cabin. Its shape mirrored by the air vents, the door trims, and the gear shifts around. The bar graph rev counter stuck to the side of the speedo pod looks a bit odd, but the wide dashboard's nice, trimmed in this cool matte finish and framed by refreshingly slim A-pillars that aid visibility. No, the quality of the trim isn't quite up to the kind of thing you'd find in, say, a Volkswagen Up, but the design is more interesting, which takes your mind off the fact. As with the exterior, personalisation rules, which is why the instrument panel, the centre console, the air vents, the gear shift knob and the gear lever surround can all easily be changed to a colour of your choosing, even after years of ownership. On a more practical note, there are 2 cup holders, a good-sized glove box and door bins big enough to hold a 500ml bottle of water. There's a bit of high-tech here too, for provided you've avoided one of the entry-level models, an X-Touch infotainment colour touchscreen is provided to dominate the centre of the dash. Now this system really adds another dimension to the Aygo, and to be honest, I'd hesitate to buy one without it. It's operated using a fully integrated 7-inch touchscreen display and is the first system in its segment to come with a rear view parking camera as standard. Functionality is via a straightforward main menu that gives easy control of the DAB audio system, vehicle and journey information, and phone connectivity that includes the sending and receiving of texts. There's also a clever so-called mirror link function that duplicates the home screen of your phone onto the display for easier acclimatization. And you can also pay extra to add an XNAV plug-in into the whole system. Now, this feature is unique to the Aygo and sits in a dedicated storage pocket in the glove box. Most Aygo models will be sold at prices somewhere in the £9,000 to £12,000 bracket, the starting point from which buyers can begin to look at the almost endless personalisation catalogue. Most prefer the 5-door body style that I have here, which commands a £400 premium over the 3-door model. And either way, the majority of buyers will want to find the extra £1,200 to progress from the entry-level X model to the much plusher X Play variant, which is the first point in the trim hierarchy where it's possible to get the X Shift automatic transmission, a £700 option. So to the value proposition that represents in the city car segment. In terms of the competition, the first alternatives you might want to consider will probably be the 2 models that share this one's basic design and roll from the same Czech factory, Peugeot's 108 and Citroen C1. With the first generation version of this car, also a shared design, these 2 French brands price themselves a few £100s below Toyota, and so it is again here, unless you're looking at an automatic, something that for some reason you'll pay slightly more for in a Citroen C1. Ultimately though, once dealer deals are taken into account, you'll find that there's not a lot in it between any of these 3 cars when it comes to price, so it really comes down to which design interpretation you prefer. This Toyota's greater scope for buyer personalisation may give it the edge here, not only over its Peugeot and Citroen rivals, but also over the single multi-branded design that really represents its toughest competition, the model that citycar sector buyers know either as a Volkswagen Up, a Skoda Citigo or a Seat Mii. At first glance, equivalent base 1 litre versions of this trio look well priced against this Aygo. The Volkswagen comparable and the Skoda and the Seat offered at a model-for-model saving of around £500. But as ever, it pays to look at the small print. To match this Toyota's running costs, you have to get these cars in their extra cost eco guises, respectively the Up Blue Motion technology, the Citigo Green Tech and the Mii Ecomotive. And that'll see you paying anywhere between £800 and £1,400 more than you would for this Toyota. It's the same story if you go for another popular citycar alternative, Hyundai's i10. The base version price matches itself against this Aygo, but to get Toyota style running costs, you actually have to pay another £1,300 more for the more efficient Blue Drive model. Ouch! In fact, to get a rival citycar model that in standard form can get closer to the efficiency figures of this Aygo, you have to cast your net further afield. Maybe towards Suzuki's Alto, the base version of which would save you around £1,500 over this car, but feels really cheap. A closer rival, I think, is Kia's Picanto, which in base 1 litre form gets within a few percentage points of this car's fuel and CO2 returns and looks good value at around £8,000. Are there other citycar options? Well, not that many. Vauxhall's Viva and Renault's Twingo are both worth a look, but will probably work out to be more expensive. And list prices suggest that a 3-door only Ford Ka, a 3-door only Fiat 500 and a 5-door only Fiat Panda certainly will, despite the fact that the old tech 1.2 litre engines the affordable versions have to have could cost you up to 20% more to run. Also around 20% less efficient is Dacia's 5-door only Sandero 0.9 litre TCE, though at least that's cheaper and more spacious in compensation. So let's say you've done your homework, weighed up all the options and decided that an Aygo is indeed what you want. What can you expect for your money? Well, it's a bit disappointing to find that the entry-level version does without a 50-50 split folding rear seat and a rev counter and can't be ordered with any of the option or customization packs that are restricted to plusher variants like this one. Still, in base X spec, you do get high-tech projector headlamps with LED tracer lights, LED daytime running lights, an integrated rear spoiler, electric front windows, a 12-volt power socket, remote central locking, aux-in and USB connectivity, and an RDS stereo, though at base level this only has 2 speakers. But hey, hardly any of the Aygos sold here will be base X spec cars. Your dealer will be wanting you to start your search on the second rung of the trim ladder, X Play, the point at which you can really start to specify your car the way that you want it, with the personalisation options and the chance to pay extra for key features like X-Nav satellite navigation, the X-Shift auto transmission I mentioned earlier, and perhaps most importantly, the X-Touch multimedia system with its integrated DAB radio, Bluetooth phone connectivity and rear view parking camera. At X-Play level, there's also air conditioning with a clean air filter, driver's seat height adjustment, larger 15-inch wheels, electric mirrors and a 4-speaker stereo you can actually hear properly, controllable from a leather-covered steering wheel. As usual though, the real niceties, things like front fog lamps, alloy wheels and climate control, are limited to top spec variants like this one. Extra cost options, rare to find in this class, include smart entry and push button start and full leather upholstery. Most buyers though will probably go shopping for a mid-range variant, then start the personalisation process. More than 10 parts around the inside and the outside of this vehicle can easily be replaced to change their look and colour with different combination packages that are usually specified through one of the various extra cost packs on offer. Now these are dubbed Outburst, Outshine, Outshield and outstand for the exterior, and inspire, intense and in style for the interior. You might also want to have your car's double bubble roof covered in contrasting decals, or ramp up your street cred with optional 5-spoke alloy wheels in silver, glossy black, machined glossy black or white. Paying extra for a bit of Aygo tinsel is fair enough, but having to fork out more to get a decent safety spec is less acceptable. The first generation version of this car did without safety basics like ESP stability control, side airbags and ISOFIX child seat fastenings, which was really unacceptable. Fortunately, this time round, Toyota has put things right. All models get the same complete safety equipment tally, running to twin front, side and curtain airbags, stability control, ABS and ISOFIX. There's even a tyre pressure warning system, a hill start assist control to stop you drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and a speed limiter on manual models to help safeguard your licence in urban areas. One major difference between this Aygo and its Peugeot 108 and Citroen C1 design stablemates is that this Toyota doesn't offer the option its French competitors provide of a pokier 82 brake horsepower 1.2 litre petrol engine to sell alongside the standard 69 brake horsepower 1 litre petrol unit that all three cars share. Toyota says that potential buyers won't want the higher running costs of the faster power plant. It'll be interesting to see if they're right. So it's 1 litre petrol power here or nothing. A throbbing, characterful 3-cylinder unit that's fundamentally the same as that used in the previous model, but has been re-engineered for this second generation car with a higher compression ratio, a lower friction timing chain, and a cylinder head with built-in exhaust manifold to help save weight. In fact, this car is 60 kilograms lighter than its predecessor, which should also help. As a result of all this, combined cycle fuel economy has improved by just over 3 miles to the gallon to 68.9 miles to the gallon. Couple that economy with a 35 litre fuel tank and you have a vehicle with a range of over 530 miles, which, given typically small city car annual mileages, will probably mean that you won't get on first name terms with the staff at your local filling station. CO2 emissions, meanwhile, are 4 grams per kilometre better, now rated at 95 grams per kilometre. Though, of course, this car's Peugeot 108 and Citroen C1 design stablemates can match these figures, no other rival city car can, unless it's purchased in an extra-cost, eco-minded guise. So, for example, if you buy a standard 1 litre Volkswagen Up, Seat Mii, Skoda Citigo or Hyundai i10, your running costs will be 10 to 15% higher, unless you're prepared to find anything between £800 and £1,500 more at point of purchase for an eco-branded version, respectively the Up Blue Motion technology, the Mii Ecomotive, the Citigo Green Tech and the i10 Blue Drive. It always pays to read the small print, doesn't it? Still, at least these rivals can be frugal. The least powerful 1.2 litre petrol engine you'll find matched up against this Aygo in a Ford Ka, a Fiat Panda or a Fiat 500 will take you 10 to 15 fewer miles on every gallon and will chug out 20 to 25 grams per kilometre more of CO2. If we'd have been talking about the first generation version of this Toyota, it's at this point that I'd have cautioned you against opting for the automatic version with its much higher running costs. This time round, though, there's not such a penalty in going for what is now called the X-Shift model. In fact, there's hardly any penalty at all, combined cycle fuel consumption dropping only slightly to 67.3 mpg, and CO2 emissions now making it below the key 100 grams per kilometre barrier to 97 grams per kilometre. Whichever version you choose, you can keep an eye on your fuel consumption progress via the useful graphs provided in the X-Touch multimedia system. What else? Well, there's no diesel option, of course. I say of course because the figures show that 90% of city car buyers historically haven't wanted to pay the premium for fueling from the black pump, and there seems no prospect of that attitude changing very soon. As for residual values, well, they may not be quite as strong as those commanded by, say, Volkswagen Up, but once you've had a chat with your friendly Toyota dealer, you'll probably end up paying less for an Aygo, which will sort that out anyway. And depreciation on this car has traditionally been slightly less than is the case with its Peugeot and Citroen design stablemates. Insurance is rated at Group 6E for entry-level trim, or otherwise Group 7E. That's a little dearer than the newest crop of rivals, but not by enough to be significant. It still means that the Aygo makes a great choice for newly qualified or younger drivers looking for their first car. Here it'll probably help that the body panels are designed to pop straight off, which makes accident damage cheap and easy to fix. Talking of maintenance, the 5-year 100,000 mile warranty is extremely good, and even after that runs out, you'll find that most spares are inexpensive, as you have the choice to source the majority of mechanical items from either a Toyota, a Citroen or a Peugeot outlet. There's also 3 years warranty against rust and 12 years of anti-corrosion protection. At first glance, it would be entirely understandable if you felt that this second Aygo interpretation was a case of style over substance. The wheelbase is still the same. You still find a 1-litre 3-cylinder petrol engine beneath the bonnet, and the basic handling dynamics a little changed. Even the interior accommodation is much the same. Despite all of that though, there's no doubt that the updates that have created this second generation Aygo really bring it into contention in this segment. The cabin now feels far more modern. The clever X-Touch infotainment system is a must-have, and it's hard to think of a bolder, more progressive looking city car on sale at any price. In short, this once conservative model now has real presence and desirability. Yes, it's a design that still might disappoint in terms of total space, and the improved handling still doesn't quite hit the class benchmark. But it's now versatile and fun to drive enough for these things not to put you off imagining one in your mental driveway. From being forgettable, this car is now genuinely likable, and there's a world of difference between those two attributes. You could imagine caring about this Toyota, feeling a genuine sense of pride in ownership. If that was Toyota's aim, then the mission's been accomplished.